My name is Bill Preston. I'm the president of AFGE Local 17. That's American Federation of Government Employees, Union Local 17. We represent all bargaining unit employees at Veterans Affairs Central Office in Washington, D.C., at the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. We are a wall-to-wall union local that represents all members of the collective bargaining unit in all GS and wage grade categories.
So how many workers work at the Veterans Administration where you represent them?
There are several thousand people who are officially employed at VA Central Office as their official duty station. Our bargaining unit consists of approximately 2,250 collective bargaining unit employees.
And how has your membership been impacted by this closure?
Our membership has been severely impacted by this closure. Many people have been furloughed, and many people live paycheck to paycheck. And now this element of deep financial insecurity and catastrophe in many instances has been introduced into their lives as a result of this totally unnecessary ordeal that the Tea Party and Ted Cruz are putting the country through.
And how is it going to be impacting veterans?
It is going to be severely impacting veterans as well, because the delivery of veterans benefits, compensation, are going to be grinding to a halt the longer this drags on, and towards the end of the month especially, and people counting on their checks are simply not going to get them, unfortunately.
And, what's going on? Why is this happening?
What this is about is the Tea Party and Ted Cruz, as the leader of the Tea Party faction in Congress, holding the country hostage, throwing a temper tantrum because they haven't gotten their way, and also acting more insidiously like hostage takers, insisting that unless they get their way regarding policies of the president that have already been litigated and judicially challenged and overcome challenges on multiple occasions and in Congress as well, that unless they get their way, they're going to bring the government to a standstill. And what that is about is a much deeper, broader, and ongoing offensive of labor, offensive of capital against labor. It's a one-sided class war by capital against labor.
And they have said that they'll open up department by department.
Yeah.
What's that all?
Well, that is a tactic to basically reopen only those aspects of the government that are in sync with the Tea Party agenda. Mm-hmm. And if there's any capitulation to that, then we can forget about the EPA ever being reopened, OSHA, and many areas of the government that respond to people's basic needs. They will remain unopened.
And this idea of opening government agency one by one.
Yeah.
What are they trying to say with that?
Well, what they're trying to say, they are trying to compel the president to bargain against himself and on the Tea Party's terms, under circumstances where only those agencies that the Tea Party is okay with existing will be reopened, and the others will remain closed forever.
And
they will never be reopened if that's the road that's taken.
These same people really are against unions.
Of course, they hate unions.
And they would like a union-free environment.
Absolutely, yeah. They, they talk of Friedrich Hayek and the road to serfdom, but what they really would like to see is a new form of serfdom, where employees or workers, people who have to sell their exchangeable skills on the market in order to earn a living, that they are reduced to a penurious and miserable state, have no rights at work, no rights in the broader society, because this Tea Party, if it succeeds at these objectives right now, it's not going to stop. It's going to realize, like a child that's thrown a tantrum and has gotten its way, anytime they don't get their way, they'll shut the government down. And so, they want to get rid of Social Security and Medicare, and ultimately many of these forces wish to restore Jim Crow and, the most putrid aspects of racism in the United States.
So you think there's a racial component to
absolutely,
this?
Yeah. Yeah, in the Tea Party's gun sights are the gains that African Americans have made over the past several decades through the civil rights movement. And that is why their attacks on federal and postal workers take on a special significance. Veterans are being severely impacted by this. The work of the employees that we represent is work that directly serves our nation's veterans. The employees that our union represents are the people who work veterans' benefits claims. They are the people who tend to the sick in the hospitals, and they are the people who help bury deceased veterans in veteran cemeteries. And so all of these services are, if they haven't ground to a halt, they are potentially at risk. Yes, the hospitals are continuing, but we don't know where this will end.
Are you shocked that they would take action that would actually harm the veterans who have given their lives and their families have been put through a living hell, a lot of them, just to support the United States, and they do this to them?
No, because I think although they pay outward lip service to veterans, in fact, in their hearts, they don't really believe in. Many of these Tea Party people don't really believe in these programs. From their point of view, I believe that they think when someone has done their service, that's it. I think many of them really view this as a welfare program, and they would wish that it all go away. They don't think they believe in what the Veterans Affairs Department does for people.
And you're under the Democrats, in order to get a budget, agreed to the Republican budget.
Right.
What has the Republican budget meant to you and other government employees?
Well, the Republican budget has put the government in straitened circumstances, and so there was a lot of fine talk when this administration came in, and in terms of the road that we've actually marched down, the Republicans have gotten a lot of what they sought.
And it was actually a reduced budget based on cutbacks and furloughs.
Right. Yeah.
Is that still going on?
The employees that we represent are being impacted now for 3 years by pay freeze and downgrades and sequester. And now this.
So this is on top of.
This is on top of that. Yeah.
And a lot of people have had to cut back. How has it affected people personally? This for 3 years?
Well, like I said, people often live paycheck to paycheck and have their rent and mortgage and other obligations, and a lot of expectations that they had about what they could accomplish for themselves and their families and their children's education, and so
it's
all of these are being, it's all threatened.
And this on top of it.
That's right.
Now, the whole question of what's going on in this country, it seems like there are more and more billionaires. There's a great disparity of wealth.
Right.
While working people, public workers, and others are fearing the brunt of it. It seems like some people are doing very well.
Yes.
At the top.
Yeah.
Is this part of what's happening?
Yeah. Well, the value of public service has been denigrated. We are employees we represent are made to feel as if what they do is of little consequence.
And the AFL-CIO, I was at the AFL-CIO convention. There wasn't really any kind of national campaign against privatization, against outsourcing, against the attack on public employees. Do you think the labor movement has to kind of begin a real political national campaign of all labor to defend public services?
Yes, yeah. I think the labor movement is in deep trouble, and the causes they go way back. They have to do with the very model of the labor movement as a business unionism, as a job protection insurance program, and so often people's immediate concerns in the workplace with grievances are addressed, and in some instances addressed very competently, but broader issues of a trade union consciousness and a more political consciousness, they're not developed at all, and that's very much to the detriment of the working class and not just the organized labor movement.
And what do you see doing to reactivate for the labor movement to really take up your case? This is the second There have been other shutdowns. It seems like they're continuing, but it doesn't seem like there's any national kind of action by the rest of the labor movement, uniting all public workers. There are millions of public workers.
I think we do. I think we need to unite. We need to develop in this country a broad-based, united front, a multiracial, united front of labor and allied people's movements to smash the Tea Party and to beat back this offensive by capital against labor, this one-sided class war.
Isn't that what Warren Buffett
by capital against labor?
Warren Buffett said there's a one-side class war.
Well, he said it, but he's part of that capitalist class that's conducting this war.
And one of the things about the shutdown, I mentioned earlier, that in the parks they're closing concessionaries, they're closing visitors, people can't do it. A lot of workers, a lot of auxiliary workers who work in federal agencies are being affected. But it seems like the mining and gas production and big corporations are continuing to exploit the public lands.
Well, yes, and if the administration wanted to be prudent, not to mention aggressive in responding to the Tea Party, it could stop the government operations in these areas, and that would involve sectors of big business that are, maybe sitting on the sidelines now, coming in and adding their pressure onto the Republicans.
And what can people do who want to support the struggle to defend the federal workers and public workers in general?
Well, I think that they should protest. I believe that there should be maximum continuous pressure applied on Capitol Hill. There ought to be daily protests, not just one event here and another event there. It should be ongoing and continuous. And there, coming back to the issue of the veterans not getting their benefits, almost 100 years ago there was a bonus march in Washington, D.C. The veterans who had been promised benefits pitched their tents further on down the mall here. And I think it's time for a bonus march too. I think it's time for a bonus march of veterans that would come here at Capitol Hill, pitch their tents, kind of in Occupy style, occupy the Capitol. So people from all over the country should come and protest on a daily basis against the Tea Party and Ted Cruz.
And the bonus army, people in this country don't even know about that.
Right.
The problem, the lack of education.
Well, that's true. Yeah, the
people who don't even know what happened with veterans 100 years ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of forgotten history, which we need to recapture.
Okay, again, you introduce yourself.
I'm Bill Preston. I'm the president of AFGE Local 17. And we represent all of the bargaining employees at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs Central Office.
And what day is this on the shutdown?
Well, today is day 11, isn't it? Yeah.
My name is Jim Alsop. I'm with AFGE.
And you're here in front of the Capitol.
Yes.
What day is this of the shutdown?
Day 11.
Day 11 of the shutdown. Your union is here, and you feel that this is what's happening here, the shutdown of the government, is a threat not only to yourself, but the people that you serve.
Oh, absolutely. The veterans are going to be affected even more and more as they go on. Veterans are being affected in the sense that, federal employees are getting their heart cut out of them by this action. They're deemed to be second-class citizens. They're deemed to be unworthy of any kind of respect in any way. And yet they're expected to take care of the very people who went overseas and fought for us. And those men deserve, and women deserve, the best medical care, the best health care that they can possibly get. And yet Congress is impeding that by doing exactly what they're doing today. And veterans across the nation should be up in arms about this because their brothers are being affected by it. And there is no way that we should ever stand for it. This is behavior that if you pulled this off in any federal employee, it did what these guys are doing. If any private employee did what these guys are doing, they'd be fired. And so maybe that's what we should do.
And I mean, some employees, I know I interviewed or heard a federal employee who works at the Social Security saying they're being told to go back to work, but they're not getting paid.
Oh.
It's against the 13th Amendment.
It's against a lot of different things. It's un-American for one, but to have the federal government expect people to go and work and to be treated in this way, you're closing in on issues of slavery.
Now, some of the people behind this who are pushing this agenda want to open up department by department, and apparently they would agree to open up the Veterans Agency. What's behind the people who are really engineering this?
I think you're giving them too much credit if you say that they're engineering anything. I think that what they are doing is stepping into it, and they don't know what they're stepping into and how they're stepping into it. I think that the congressmen who are involved in this are cold-hearted, number one, and I don't think that they should. I think it'd be very difficult for them to wake up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror. There are people out there who want a more effective federal government in terms of federal workers in the agencies that they work in. And I happen to be one of them, and I do think that there's a lot of waste in government. But in my opinion, based on the actions of these few people, there is more waste here, and it has affected far more people than anything that an agency can do on its own.
And public workers are being scapegoated.
Absolutely.
Teachers, public workers, and those workers who are whistleblowers who try to confront the waste themselves are targeted. Is that going on from your knowledge? I mean, people who try to speak up about some of the waste problems themselves get targeted?
Well, the Whistleblower Act is limited in what it can do to protect people. And when people find out about the lack of protection that they have under the Whistleblower Act, they choose not to disclose anything. They have families to feed, they have things that they need to do in order to survive, and frankly, they're not going to be able to do that if they disclose the information. I think that the Whistleblower Act should be strengthened, and I think that people ought to be encouraged, because the very people who know about this fraud, waste, and abuse are the people who work in these agencies and see it go on.
And they're conscientious and they want to do their job.
Absolutely they do. And I think that congressional effort to cast the federal worker as someone who doesn't care, who are simply freeloaders, maybe they should take a look at themselves in the mirrors, because they're the ones who are on a perpetual campaign to be reelected, and it's not the federal government workers.
Well, there also is a campaign against Social Security disability. They're saying people are taking that unfairly. But isn't there a cost shifting going on in this country? Workers get injured or people get hurt and then end up Social Security disability. I mean, employers and insurance companies are not taking care of people who...
Well, I think that there are a lot of people who... there's certainly abuse in the systems of... that have been in place for a long period of time. Social Security fraud is not new, but it's what is new, I think, is the attack on workers, not only in government but also privately, where they have been forced to. They no longer have the security network that they used to have.
And we're engaged, the United States, in all these wars around the world, 700 bases.
Right.
Veterans, workers are being, soldiers, military people are being killed all the time or injured. What is the situation as far as our veterans in this country?
Well, they've carried a burden. They've carried a huge burden for a long period of time.
Robert Autry, A-U-T-R-E-Y. I'm the FEMA president, Local 4060, AFGE.
And how many members do you have, and what kind of work do you do?
I have approximately 200 members in our union, and I represent 1,593 bargaining unit employees at the agency.
Well, how is this a threat to your employees and to the public?
Well, right now we cannot provide the essential services to the people. If there's a hurricane or tornado, they're calling us in on a piecemeal basis to track to track a hurricane, but in order to be fully staffed to effectively help the people who are going to be impacted by provide that service to the community and the people.
So with all the environmental weather situation, this could be a potentially catastrophic thing.
Yes, it could be for the whole entire nation, an embarrassment to the people that we serve. Yes.
Is this a failed nation?
I think so. Yes. It's not a popular position that we're in, and I think that Congress need to get its act together. And one way I think that should happen is to apply the pressure by putting Congress pay on what I would call discretionary spending side, as opposed to the mandatory spending side of things. As long as people got mandatory spending, they know they're going to get that money automatically. They need to feel the pinch like we are. We're on the discretionary side. They need to be on that same side. And maybe they can make a decision.
And public employees have been facing a brunt and attack. Public employees have been blamed in this country. What is going on? Why are public employees under such great attack in the media? Teachers for not teaching children. I mean, it seems like it's one attack after another on public workers.
I think the lack of awareness to the fact on the services that we provide, that people are not educated on the hard work that we to work. We have been in the trenches. People have seen us provide these services, and we just want to do what is best for the country,
And personally, how have your members been affected? I mean,
right now,
under cutbacks and furloughs have been there.
80% of FEMA has been furloughed. Okay, so
this is a continuing.
It's a continuing, lingering effect impacting a lot of people. Matter of fact, I have a lot of my members calling me about the unemployment benefits and stuff like that, and I told them, I say, look, if you're in a pinch, you have to do that, but keep in mind that you have to pay that money back because you can't double dip.
So your members are living check to check?
Living check to check, paycheck by paycheck, and trying to find ways. They borrowing money from their neighbors, all kind of stuff.
So people in a desperate situation, even people with full-time jobs.
Yes, they are, sir. Yes, they are. And I myself, I just cooked some food the other day, and I'm trying to stretch that out over a 3-day time frame, just to, budget my money accordingly.
So, I mean, it seems like the wealthy 1% are growing in this country. The top 1%, they're getting more and more money. I mean, the billionaires and...
Yes, and they're getting at the expense of the people who are actually providing the service to the people, and they really don't care about the people underneath them. As long as they get their profits and can benefit, keep money in their pocket to invest it in whatever areas that they deem necessary for them without thinking of the little people is mind-boggling.
What's it going to take to change this whole thing? Because the tide seems to be that they can do what they want and they really don't care what people think.
I think that the average American, be it poor, middle people, or whatever the case may be, we need to look at the Constitution. We need to change some of the laws and stuff that are benefiting the corporate rich people and let them feel the pinch. Because we need to reverse this trend.
And the AFL-CIO, the unions, there are millions of organized workers. Where are they? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any mass mobilization of the entire working class.
I think that we're getting the communication out to everybody. For example, I think the weather could have had a little damper on this particular rally, but I have strongly urged a lot of my members to not sit at home, get out, because we need to show force to let the people know that we care about our jobs.
You have to put your body on the line to make a change.
Yes, and I got to lead by example as a president.
And how many public employees are there in Washington, D.C.?
How many public employees in Washington, D.C.? I would say approximately, are you talking about D.C. government workers too?
All public.
All together, 650,000 of us.
So 650,000 public workers. That's a lot of workers right here in Washington, D.C.
In D.C., yes.
So maybe some more of them will start coming out.
Hopefully they will be, sir. From what I've been told, we have close to 800,000 something, but there might be others that are around the country.
And then the workers who are getting laid off who need, accelerated services or tourism or all the other workers. We're talking millions of workers.
Yes. And we need to open the government back up to provide necessary service to the people right now.
What does it say that they would shut down the government to get their demands? What does it mean that they would shut down the government to say either give us what we want or we're going to shut down the government?
When you say something like that, to me, you're putting out a threat. You're holding people hostage, and they have no control over your demand. But the key word is compromise. we got to meet halfway in order to get this thing right. And if we don't, we're going to sit around the table and we're not going to be able to resolve a lot of stuff or bring resolution to a lot of the issues.
Now, another issue is I'm from the Bay Area, but a lot of public workers that are being attacked are Black, Latino, public services, transit workers and others. Do you think there's any racial component in the attack on public workers in this country?
Yes, I would say so, because at my agency we have what I would call the undercurrent, where a lot of the top jobs are not there for people who are qualified, minority or whatever the color of their skin may be, and the good old boy network still need to be kind of like broken into and broken down, that hey, this is unacceptable in this day and time, that we're still living in a backward society.
Plantation mentality?
Yes, more or less, sure. I mean, everybody, if you're qualified for a job, you should be given that job. It shouldn't be given to a person who does not meet the qualification because they just happen to be your best friend. It should work like that. Cronyism, all that good stuff. Yeah.
I'm Steve Hopkins. I'm an employee of the Environmental Protection Agency. Out here today on my own as a furloughed employee to try to get us back to work. In the budget that the Senate passed in order to avoid a furlough, in the line item that pays for EPA, called Environment in the Interior, they removed $3 billion from that line item. EPA's share of that would be $660 million, and which means that as a federal will be faced with more furloughs, more layoffs, more RIFs, and more pressure on older people to retire during the coming year, no matter what happens. We just got off 6 days of furlough. We can't handle a shutdown. We can't handle another 20-some days of furlough next year. And we need to get our act together. We're here to do a job. It was a job that Congress gave us to do. Let us do our work. That's all we ask. Just let us do our work.
So this cutback on the budget, this has been going on for some time with these budgets.
EPA's budget peaked at a little above $10 billion. It is now at $8.1 or $8.2 billion. And this budget, the Senate budget, will cut that by at least another $1 billion.
Why don't you talk about how this will affect the American people?
Well, it will affect the American people from purely my agency standpoint, because we won't be doing the job to protect human health and the environment. That's the mission that Congress gave us. We won't be setting standards that are protective of human health, and then individual people will have to pick up the cost of the pollution in terms of their child having asthma, in terms of their drinking water being bad, in terms of toxic pollution in the groundwater and in the rivers and streams that we won't be doing anything about. So that in my interpretation of that is that industry and the 1% will be making the money and the people will be paying the price. We have seen since 1980 socialized risk, spread the risk among everybody, but don't touch my profit. And this is more of the same. It is a lot cheaper and a lot more effective to solve these problems before they get out into the air, into the water, and to prevent kids from having asthma instead of treating a bunch of kids with asthma. And that's the mission of the EPA. We need to be able to do our mission, and everybody benefits. It improves the economy, improves life for everybody. It isn't and never has been jobs versus the environment, although it's a good sales pitch. I've used it. It is that we've got to protect the environment, and we have to protect the economy, and we have to protect the social structure so people can live.
Well, their ideology is that the market, let the market determine that these companies will protect the environment. You don't have to worry about a government.
That would be fine if the companies had to pick up all the cost of that. But if the company says to you, well, you have to do this, and gee, it pollutes the water, but that's all right, we're not picking up the cost of the polluted water, that's a problem. If they were picking up all the costs, that'd be fine, but then they'd be in here clamoring for the government to do it, because it's a lot cheaper to do it once than to do it over and over and over again.
And one of the things that hasn't happened is that in federal parks, federal lands, they haven't shut down gas, oil, coal operations. They're still operating.
They're still operating, and we're still giving them tremendous subsidies so that they can operate free. And then we take their numbers to say, what did you pump out of the ground? And
so you rely on these companies' numbers about what they're taking out of the ground?
They're good for the companies. They're great for the companies. not great for everybody else. When you look at America and the cost of fuel here is much, much less than any other country. That's because we're subsidizing the development of fuel here. We're polluting our own environment to be able to do it. And when we cut back on the number of federal workers, then you're not doing things like inspecting the oil rigs before something happens. You're not doing a good job looking at the spill plans. You're not doing the analysis. And then when something happens, they say, oh, some low-level federal employee signed off on this plan and he shouldn't have because it was a Xerox of some plan in the Arctic, but he was told you got so many plans a year to sign and you better sign them or we're going to fire you. And that just pushes it down to the lowest common denominator. And you can't have that. If we're going to do the job, we need to be staffed and equipped to be able to do it and do what Congress told us to do and do it well. If we had protected the wetlands south of New Orleans, that hurricane wouldn't have damaged New Orleans. But even more closely, if we hadn't zeroed out the maintenance budget on those levees, the levees would have been able to withstand. But we haven't gone back and said, Congress, why did you zero out the maintenance on the levees that caused all this damage and all this death? We just shell out I don't know how many billions of dollars to clean up the mess. So we're not looking to do things right, we're looking to do things on the cheap, and that doesn't work.
That's costing the American people.
It's costing the American people very dearly. It's costing lives, it's costing people.